Audio is on, and you are live.
All right, I am live. Welcome to Adorama TV on set. I am Daniel Norton here with Cadence. Seth over here on the Mighty Mix. And today we're going to talk about fill light. Yay! Which is super fun, right? So we're going to kind of talk about the basics of it, why we might use fill light, different types of fill light, and we'll kind of walk through and do some examples. So we'll make some portraits. What we want to do, when you think about fill light, we want to think of, before I do that, you may notice that I have Faygo. Apparently, Faygo is a very popular soft drink in the Midwest. I had never heard of it before, and when I was there in Indianapolis for Gen Con, I picked one up. So I'm gonna, at some point during the stream, I'm gonna drink this. I won't do it at the beginning, just in case. Could be some weird side effects, you never know. Let me know which flavor of Faygo you like the best in the chat, because it must be popular, right? Seth likes grape, but I went with rock and rye.
I don't like any of it.
He loves grape, he told me. He's like, why don't you get me some grape? Anyways. Seth has put a link to my podcast in the chat. Please check it out, A Voice with Daniel Norton. I talk about all kinds of fun stuff, but rarely do I talk about Faygo. So it's probably worth looking at, ever. This is my first time ever. All right, so let's talk about fill light. Why are we using it? A lot of times when people will set up their portraits or whatever, they look at that book that you got, the one that was written in 1973. You know, it's like, put your light here, Rembrandt. You know, and then they add the fill light. It's like, well, what is this fill light for? What is the point of the fill light? And really what the fill light is doing is it's balancing out contrast, right? We want to create shadow and shape on our subject with our key light, our main light. That light is designed to give the ideal shape that we want, whether it be a dramatic look with like a Rembrandt type light or like a beauty light that's gonna come down and shape the face. But if our shadows are too deep and dark, we won't be able to print it, or perhaps there'll be no detail there where we want it. So the point of the fill light is to bring that up. The point of the fill light is not necessarily to completely wipe it out. If you have a shadow you just don't like and it's not shaping the face the right way, that means that your key light's in the wrong space, or you gotta change your key light. You don't wanna just hit it with more light. That is not what the fill light's for. One of the best things that you can do is to put somebody in a place, if you're outside, let's say in the natural light, where the light looks pretty decently, or if we're gonna light somebody, we wanna take our key light and put it in the right place to start with. We don't wanna start with bad light and then try to fix it with a fill light. So that's super important. So let's get a kind of a general light in place and we'll go from there. I'm gonna use my favorite softbox, which is the Chimera extra small. It's silver lined and it's shallow, much like me. I mean, I'm silver lined, not shallow. Silver haired. Silver fox. All right, so this is in a Profoto B10, which is a battery powered mono light. I'm on a C-stand. Somebody's gonna start complaining about sandbags. It's not being boomed. It doesn't need a sandbag, but since the sandbag people like to see them, I will do it for you. Yeah, always. So I'll put the sandbag here. When you put a sandbag on a C-stand, you always put it on the leg closest to, or with the one with the weight on it, which is this one. The tall leg. The first leg, the pointy leg, the one with the weight. This leg.
The highest
All right.
one.
Yeah, the highest one. So here we are. Well, it's not always, yeah, I guess it's always. Okay, so I'm gonna take my light and I'm gonna actually move it in relatively close, because the closer the light is to the subject, number one, the larger it'll be, so it'll be softer, which is just generally good for portraits, but also the fall off will be more dramatic, right? We'll get fast fall off, which means we'll see shadows.
Can you talk about what that background is?
So this background is a roll of Duvetine. You can pick that up at Adorama, which is, effectively it is a black fabric that absorbs light. It's what flags are made out of. If you ever heard flag or cutter or any of those words, this is the fabric it's made out of, but you can buy it in rolls. It is light tight, it is black, and as an extra bonus, it is flame retardant, which is always nice. So you could theoretically make children's pajamas out of it, although they probably wouldn't be very comfortable.
Can you see what the light is again?
The light is a Profoto B10, which is a battery-powered monolight. All right, so that's putting the link in the chat. This is a really nice little monolight. You can run it off the AC by plugging it in, but right now it issues batteries. I'm controlling it with a controller on the top, Profoto Air Remote. I have two lights. I'm gonna actually see, you can see they're labeled. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I have a piece of tape on them. This one's A and that one's B. I'm gonna take my B light and I'm gonna turn it off because we just wanna start with one light. So with this light, I'm gonna light Cadence. But before we do any of that, we're going to say to ourselves, well, hold on, how should we set our camera? Oh, clearly the green box, right? No, not the green box. Never, no, we're in manual. So we're going to set our camera in a way that we're going to remove any light from our space, because we want to know that our flash is what's causing our exposure. It's making the exposure the way we want. So I'm going to turn off my flash for a second, my controller, I should say, and I'm going to set my camera. I want to set it at the lowest ISO within the normal range, which in this case with this camera is 100. I'm going to set it at the highest shutter speed that will synchronize with flashes, which again, in this case of this camera is 200th of a second. And then I'm going to set my aperture based on a few things. Number one, close down enough to get rid of the light in the space, and also to get the look I want. Since I don't care if the background's in or out of focus, I can be somewhere, I don't have to be wide open or anything like that. So I'm gonna go for 5.6. I'm looking at the back of the camera, it looks black. I don't see anything, but I'm gonna take a shot just to confirm.
There's a request for you to explain light fall off.
All right, so I'm gonna explain light fall off in a second. All right, so back over at the computer, we can see that the frame is black. And if I grab my slider, I can grab my exposure slider and start to move it over. And I want to drag it over until I see, cadence start to appear. It's about 2 stops, which tells me that that's my shadow base, right? I have about 2 stops of movement in the shadows, which means that I'm overpowering, if you will, the light in the space. Well, I'm going to overpower the light in the space with my flash. I haven't done it yet, obviously. All right. This is important because if I expose, let's say, for the room, then my flash is only going to be whatever it is, right? I won't have total control, and when you're teaching how to use fill light, that's not ideal. All right, so let's talk about fall off, but let me take a shot first. There was a band in the 90s, I think, called Fall Off Boy.
I thought it was Fallout.
Oh.
That was like in the 2000s.
It was in the 2000s, all right. I don't know when it was. My joke is less effective when I don't use proper...
Jokes are never effective.
My joke's never effective, that's probably true. Okay, so.
I also don't know if I'm making that up.
You might be right. You're right. No, you're absolutely right. All right, so I'm gonna make a photo. Now, let's talk about light fall. First of all, because I'm gonna get this question too, so I'll try to get them as I go. Why am I not using a light meter? There's always that one person that works at the light meter company in the chat that asks me that. I am using a light meter, the one in the camera. These lights work on a system called TTL, which is through the lens metering, right? Which means that I'm using the meter in my camera. So I'm trusting the meter in my camera to make the exposure. It has given me this for an exposure, which looks pretty good to me. So we're good to go. So light fall off is the I keep going to the corner, the amount of time or distance across the subject that it takes to go from the neutral, which is like skin tone, for instance, to shadow. So we can see here that we have neutral here, and then we go a little darker over the cheek, and then we get real dark right here. That's pretty quick light fall off. Some people will see that and they'll say, well, that must be a hard light because there's shadows. That's not true, right? Hard soft has to do with the shadow transition, which is basically this area in the middle, right? This is a soft light because I can see that it goes from neutral gradually into shadow and then dark. It happens quickly because I have fast fall off, but it is a soft light. If I was using something like an on-camera flash from a distance away, it would go boom and it would go instantly to shadow with a hard line. That's a hard light. We'll deal with that in a second, actually. So that's what fall off is. So we can see now that we've got this light here. We have this shadow. The simplest way to fill a light is to use some kind of a reflector, right? So I often will use a piece of foam board to do that, which we'll do in a second, but I figured today I would use a fancy professional reflector. This is a Manfrotto Halo 32-inch, I think the size, right? Reflector. So this is basically like one of those pop-up reflectors, except nicer. This one can fold down really small. It's got like a solid frame in it. But basically we have a silver side and we have a white side. Now, the white reflective side is going to reflect less, but be more gentle. The silver side is going to reflect more, but be more harsh. So I'm going to use silver just to show you it first. What we're going to do here is when you're using a reflector in this way, we have to consider where our light's coming from, right? We can see where the shadow is on Cadence's face, so that's where we need to put the reflector on the opposite side of the light to reflect it back in. So I can see that my light goes here. If I put my reflector here, it's going to bounce off the reflector and fill in that shadow. I'm still in TTL. Okay, so we can see now that what we've got is the same light positioning, right? So we still have this shape to her face. We can still see like under the shadow here. We can see this shadow here. But we can see that this shadow area here is now filled in. So that's fill light. That's what they call passive fill. It's passive because it's just sitting there hanging out, right? It's like, oh, I'm just hanging out here. It's, you know, if the light bounces off me, I guess, yeah, not looking for any trouble. Anything can be a fill light. Now I used the silver side to be more dramatic, but the white is probably more appropriate because we don't want our light to necessarily be super flat, right? Because flat light, I mean, it actually doesn't look bad here, but it can be boring. So we'll come back in and we'll use the white side, which will give us less fill. And now we've got a light that, again, the shadow is still here, but it is filled in, right? Versus the silver, which is more extreme, okay? See the difference? Silver, white. So it kind of comes down to what you're trying to build. If you want your light to be completely gone, basically, a harder type reflector, like a silver reflector, might be appropriate. It might not be the best thing depending on what you're reflecting onto, though, because a silver reflector can often create highlights and uneven, splotchy light. But this one happens to be a really nice one. You can see the link below. Did you have to add a little like ding ching to my eye like you're selling something? Okay, there's a link. All right, so, but for those of you who do not want to spend $99,
I got those neon boards too.
oh, and we have neon boards. Okay, well, of course we have to do that. You can also use a piece of foam board. Anything can be a reflector. Just keep in mind that the surface of the reflector, that is the reflectiveness of it, so this is fairly matte, and the color of it are going to matter. If this was off-white, or if it was gray, you know, or if it was purple, it would reflect back differently than just this matte white. So let's just try this. Again, we're still going passive right here, keeping it chill. Right, and we can see that this is also nice. So here we are with that versus the professional one, and we see that the difference is not great here. So you might be like, well, why would I buy the more professional one, Daniel? Well, I mean,
It collapses.
exactly. This does not fit in your pocket very easily. It also gets very dirty, and you know, it's when you show up to, you're charging somebody hundreds of dollars to make their portrait, and you show up with a piece of cardboard. I mean, Seth will show up with a pizza box, but he's a baller. I am not a baller, so I gotta show out with my fancy gear. Exactly. No, so yeah, the portability of it is why you want to get some kind of collapsible reflector. In studio, I almost always use pieces of foam board, different color ones. I can cut them to different sizes. I can do all kinds of stuff with it. But for location, it's nice to have some kind of a collapsible one. Also, things like this last light thing can be fitted with diffusion, so we can do what's called active fill. I'm not going to switch this to diffusion now because I don't want you to stand there and watch me do it. So I have something else. This is like one of those cooking shows where you come out with the finished thing.
It's already done.
Yep, it's already done. Here I have a Chimera 4x4 panel frame with a 3/4 silk. Now, this, did I totally block her? Okay. So this is probably more likely where I should put a sandbag.
So they're saying, one guy's saying, your favorite soft box is rectangular, but isn't a circular patch like more favorable?
Depends on the subject.
Okay.
Listen to you.
Isn't a, what kind of catch-light? A circular one?
Isn't a circular?
Okay, so my favorite softbox is a rectangle, but aren't circular catch lights better? I guess. I don't know. It really depends on what you want for the, I'm not a catch light person. You know, it doesn't really affect me. This is how I think about it. When I am creating an image of somebody, like let's say this portrait of Cadence, it should be pretty clear that we are in some kind of a studio or something and I am making a portrait of her. Thus the idea that like the catch light should look like the sun or that it shouldn't look like anything is foreign to me. But even then, if I was inside, most places have square and rectangular windows. So it feels more like a window light. Now, if you want a round reflection in the eye, then obviously an octagon type box or a circular box is also good. I don't really have a preference personally. I like the softbox because it creates beautiful light. I don't worry about the catch light. I feel like that's less important than the light that comes out of the box. Okay, we're gonna talk to the overhead. Okay, so I often talk to the camera that's not at phone. Okay, so I'm going over here. I've got my B light. Now, what I'm doing here is creating my fill the same way I did the passive fill. I'm basically taking it and I'm coming from the opposite side. Now, anybody who's seen me do stuff before is probably like, Daniel, what are you doing? I'm coming from the opposite side. The reason why I'm doing it this way is because I want to show you effectively the equivalent of what we just did. And we'll talk about using an active fill light, then we'll kind of talk about position of the fill. Okay, so this is over here. I turned the modeling light on just so you could see it better. I'll turn it off now. All right, so. Oh, sorry. I just did that so they could see where it was. Okay, so I'm going to turn this B light on. Okay. Now, if I just leave the system in TTL, which is through the lens metering, it's going to try to figure out an even exposure to keep everything flat. Let's just see what that looks like. It's always a good idea to give it a shot. Yeah, okay, there we go. It did exactly what you would expect. It has created a flat light. Now, because it's balancing the light, right, it's doing it, not me. So what I'm getting is a shadow here, which is from the fill light. This we don't want. This is why we need to either monitor our fill light's intensity based on our own personal experience and what we want, or we need to put it in a better position. So let's do the first, because it's already in this spot. I don't want this fill light to be so strong that I get a shadow going the other direction. So I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go, I can just simply look at the power on it if I want to do that and say, well, it's at 5.5. It's too strong. I want to turn it down based on my knowledge as a photographer. Maybe 2 stops is good. Or I can go into my TTL controls and I can say, hey, TTL. It's always nice. You got to be somewhat nice to it. You can't just be like, change it. Hey, TTL, that's kind of nice. Looks not bad, right? But I think we could do better. So I'm going to ask you to maybe figure out your exposure, but then maybe turn it down a couple stops. And then TTL will be like, all right. So now I have my TTL set at -2 for that light. Okay, and we can see the TTL exposure has gone down. I'm still getting a shadow here though, because it's still too much, even at -2. Now with this particular system, -2 is how far I can go, which means that I can't within the TTL do any more, so I'm going to switch to manual. In manual, I'm going to take my light and I'm going to dial it down another couple stops. Because of the way Profoto works, the lights lock in at the previous setting, and now we're starting to become more and more natural. We can still see this line a little bit, but now it's starting to blend better, okay? And now we're getting closer to that natural fill, but it still doesn't feel as if the reflector actually looks better. Why is that? Because this is a terrible position for a fill light. If you have an active fill, and you can put it wherever you want, you don't want to put it where it's potentially going to make another shadow. What you want to do is put the fill in the front. This is what we call on-axis fill, okay? Axis, not access. Access is something different. Axis, like that game Axis and Allies. All right, or the axis of the position of the, yeah, it's like geometry. But anyways, the front. Why is this? Because any shadows created by our fill light will go backwards, right? It's going to fill in all the areas and not make a shadow that we're going to notice it, really. So I'm going to take my light and I'm going to move it to the front. But Daniel, they said not to put the flash right next to the camera. Well, guess what? They're wrong. That's all I can say about that. And move this in. You know, I'm going to do it 90s style. Back in the 90s, when I was a child, well, when I was a, what do you call it when you're like in your 20s? You're not a child when you're in your 20s. I guess you're an adult. When I was an adult, I guess I'm still an adult. Back in the 90s, we used to love to, because now we're going to talk about catch lights, we used to love to take giant sources of light and put it behind us so that we could be in the pictures. Because back then there wasn't really selfies the way there are now. So photographers would be like, oh man, I want to be in the picture, so how can I do that? And then you take your light and you put it behind the camera. Now, by putting the light behind the camera, you effectively block all the people who are watching, which is, you know, never a good thing. All right. All right. Thank you, Seth. All right, so we're going to put this behind the camera. This is going to create a flat light. And to demonstrate what I mean, I'm going to go back to TTL for a second. And I'm going to take my A light, so this guy here, the small softbox, the extra small softbox, and I'm going to turn it off. So I'm going to let TTL just let this be the main light. Assuming there's enough power in it, we should get a very flat picture. Yeah. All right. What's that? The camera up there is useless. Yeah, I know. I always do that. All right.
Are you bouncing it off the wall, or is it going?
I am not bouncing it off the wall. I am shooting it through the silk. Sorry, was that unable to be seen? All right, so here's what we have here. Effectively the same type of light as you'd have if you had a flash on the camera, but it's just much softer. But what we can see is no real shadow, right? Like nothing that's going to interfere with our other light. But this is too bright, right? Because this is on exposure. So we're going to take this light while we're here, and we're going to go, this is a B light. I'm going to turn it down 2 stops because I want my shadows to be about 2 stops under my highlight. I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to turn it off for a second. I'm going to come back to A, and I'm going to turn that on, and we're going to make a shot. This is basically how you do it. If you were using a handheld light meter, you would just do each of these separately. So we're back to the original setup. Now I'm going to take my B light and turn it on, and I'm going to go to manual again, and I'm going to go -2 stops. All right, hold on. Okay, question.
Is the light that's lighting all the rectangle space, how can we know if a light is covering that space or a big softbox? I have a 200 watts.
Okay, sure, I understand the question. All right, so I'll answer that question in a second. All right, so here's what we've got. We now have, again, a clean shot that has the shape of a shadow, and we have fill, and we don't have that weird fill light shadow. And wherever she moves, we're good to go. The overall exposure looks a little bit hot to me. That's because I combined 2 lights in manual, so I'm just gonna come in and turn my A light down 2/10 before I move forward, because I'll forget to do it. All right, so the question is, how do we know that we're getting the proper coverage on the rectangle? You know, you could use a giant softbox, which would control, I guess, the spill and also make sure you cover the whole thing, right? Fair question? Yeah, a softbox is great for that reason, right? When you put a light inside a softbox, it bounces all around, comes forward, and you get that nice even fill, right? That's ideally what you get, right? Now, that is cool, so yes, good. The way that so to answer the first question, the way that I know that I'm covering this is I just turn the modeling light on, and I just move it back and forth until I get it where I want it, so it covers the whole silk. But because it's not inside of a softbox, I have the ability to move it closer, which would then not cover the whole silk and create a different effect, or further away and let some of the light scatter around the room if I wanted to. So the silk allows me more kind of options. I can also place the light not dead center in the silk. I can place it higher or lower to create a little bit of a different fall off. So that's the reason why I like a silk over a giant softbox. Plus, a softbox this size, not gonna be cheap. And it's a one-trick pony. This thing can do a lot. That's why I prefer this for a fill.
Are you suggesting that the fill light shouldn't make shadows, and why?
Okay, am I suggesting the fill light should not make shadows? Yes. You never want competing shadows because it doesn't look natural. And even in a funky shot that you're composing, you still want it to feel right. In life, we think of a single light source for the most part. That's not really how life is because there's lights everywhere when you're inside, like this terrible, ugly light in here. But that's why if you just took a picture of me in here, it would be terrible and ugly because there's a bunch of lights everywhere. But when we're somewhere nice, like let's say in the sun or on a cloudy day, we have a nice big soft light or a punchy hard light, but it's a single light source that creates one shadow that looks nice. You don't want your fill light to create its own shadow. That would look weird. Unless you want that, right?
Double nose shadows of the devil.
Double nose shadows of the devil, exactly. Yeah. So when you're trying to do something like, for instance, if you're trying to do like a 1-to-1 ratio, that's when this kind of stuff starts to happen, right? Because 1-to-1 meaning that they're balanced. A lot of times people will try to like set up like a Rembrandt-y kind of sideways light, and then they put another light next to it to fill in, and you start getting like cross shadows and stuff. This is why the on-axis fill works nicely, because it'll fill in no matter what we do. If we keep this light to the side here, and this 45, it works well. If we dangle it up front, it will work well. Whatever we do with the light, it will work well to fill it in. In fact, I will show you that. I will demonstrate now. I'm going to take this light. You could also use an umbrella with a sock. There's a lot of things you could use. There are many options to be used for the fill light. In fact, I have a giant umbrella. You could take a V-flat. You could bounce it off the wall. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. The main thing is, the main takeaway from this, and not everybody agrees with this, so I'm getting ready for the comments. I believe it is my position, I should say this, I'm setting myself up here, that the fill light should be bigger than the key, generally speaking. I see way too many people that grab their giant Octa and they're just like, a giant Octa, beautiful shot. And then their fill light is this little tiny light. And that's how you end up getting weird extra shadows. The smaller the light is, the more likely you're going to have a more distinct shadow because it's harder, right? Which means that that should be your key light because that's what's shaping the face.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm the same
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. I mean, every once in a while, you try something like you might use a strip bank or something, but generally speaking, that's the rule. All right, so I'm going to go, this is what they call split lighting. I don't know who they are, but that's what they could call it. I'm just going to turn my fill off for a second. We'll do some split lighting. She's looking at me. Boom. She's going to be split, right? Boom. Oh, so dramatic. I turn my fill light back on, and boom. So dramatic, but filled in, right? So now we got the same thing. She's making kind of a funny face, but we can see that it fills in no matter where we're at. That's not how I would use a fill light on this, but I was just showing you how it works. You know, it's too strong, basically. Now, all that being said, show me I'm gonna take a moment now to try this Fago. If you have any questions, I'm hoping it doesn't explode. I've never opened a Fago before. Oh.
It's flat.
It's kind of flat.
No.
Smells interesting.
It just coughs here at the soda.
Okay, back to this.
Not a fan?
Not a fan. Okay, so it's very flat. That is the flattest soda I have ever had, I think, except for a soda that was actually. I don't. Yeah, but it's inside a bottle. It shouldn't go flat. So when I was a kid, I'm gonna smash things. When I was a kid and we'd be sick, my mother would give us ginger ale and she would make it flat first. I don't know why. So that's what that reminds me of, being sick.
Oh.
Yeah, she would like stir it. Because I guess when you're sick, you don't want to have bubblies because, you know.
Yeah, and just the ginger helps.
Yeah, I mean, ginger ale in general is good, you know.
Yeah, but it's the ginger.
Well, when I was a kid, there was ginger and ginger ale. You know, I'm not a kid like you, Seth. All right.
I used to call this soda drink.
Let's say now, and now after I just made a statement that the fill light should be larger, I'm going to go the opposite direction just to say, sometimes you can fill with a flash on the camera. This is very useful, especially if you are, let's say, remote and you're working with available light, right? And you're like in the sun and you want to fill in, you're doing an event or something like that. We can take our flash. Here we have to be really, really careful about our ratio because, again, we don't want to create a small hard shadow. So if I come in here and I take my light, put it back in the, well, actually, I'll leave it where it was. Let's go dramatic. I'm back here. Now, this light can act, I want to make sure I'm not, can act as a controller as well. Now it says air off, which we don't want, so I'm going to turn the air off. No, it says air off, so I'm going to turn air on. Okay. Actually, I'm going to go air on, and I'm going to go transmit only. So right now, this should only fire this flash. Yep, that's what's happening. Okay, so first I'm going to take a shot.
It's firing now. The show on the camera's firing. See, there's a number on it.
It says, okay.
It's 5.0, so it's firing.
Yes, it is. It is firing. I'm going to turn the head off because it's on right now. Boop. There we go. Head off. And then I'm going to take B. This is A. Here we go. Sorry. A is on. I'm in manual. Okay, something's not right. It's not firing. I'm in channel 1. There we go. I need to be in channel 3.
Yeah, that would help.
There it is. Okay. It's very important that you're in the right channel. All right, so here we go. Boom. So we're going to get this cross light going on again. Ooh, it's very dramatic, right? Ooh, it's almost Rembrandt-y. All right, now, we want to fill in. We're going to take our light here, and I'm going to go into my menu. You understand? Let me just make sure that was clear. I'm using this as a transmitter now. So that last shot was just the light over here, the split lighting kind of dramatic feel. Now I want to fill in because I don't want it to be quite so dark in my shadows. So I'm going to come over here, take my menu. By the way, this is a Profoto A10. I'm going to go, link is in the chat. I'm going to go air on. Then I'm going to go down here to head and say on. Now this is in manual. So math tells me that this should be at about 2. Math. This is that moment where like it's going to be wrong, and then Seth's going to criticize my math. There you go. All right. So, I set it at 2, just to give myself some fill. We can see now the little catch light there. You can see this here. Oh, it does kind of look like a little bit of a window. Look at that. And what we've got is effectively, that might actually be the window reflecting you. No, it can't be. No, it's not. No, it is. No, the reason why it looks like a window is for 2 reasons. One is because the edge of her contact lens is splitting right down the center of it. And then the other reason is one of her eyelashes is, here, I will show you. See, edge of contact lens is creating that line, and then one of her eyelashes is creating that shadow. That's so wild. All right. So I did that on purpose. That was 100% intentional.
What camera are you using?
I am currently using a Nikon Z6ii with the latest firmware that Seth just updated. And I would not be able to do anything without Seth. Everybody, I can't have a round of applause because there's nobody here. Well, Cadence is here. And the 24-70 lens. This is the kit lens. I'm a 24-70 guy. What can I say? All right, so there I am filling in. Now I can increase this. If you wanted less shadow, I could start to increase, right? I'm going to go up a full stop just to kind of make a point here. But now the issue I might start to have is as I fill in more and more, if I go too far, oh, my voice changes, must be puberty. I may start to create shadow. So I just want to be real careful that I'm not going to do that. Right now I'm good. Now, if you were afraid of that and you were like, oh, I need more fill, but I don't want to create a shadow. I want my source to be bigger because Daniel said the source should be bigger. What can I do? Oh no, what am I going to do? Well, you know what? At that wedding or bar mitzvah or funeral or wherever you are, you might find a piece of foam core.
You want a pizza box? I got it.
A what?
You want a pizza box?
A pizza box? No, I can't pull that off. All right. If I take this, now, because of math, this is going to bounce into this and then bounce back. It's going to take about, I'm going to add 2 stops.
Because of math.
I'm going to add 2.5 stops. All right, so. There we go. Now, well, it's amazing when it works, right? So now we've got, again, a little bit of a better fill. You can actually still see the edge of the light in it, but we're getting like a little bit of a softer fill. So again, you can bounce it and stuff like that. You can use a wall behind you to do it. There's all kinds of ways to do it to make it larger if you don't want to just have the flash on the camera. But an on-camera flash is incredibly useful as a fill. Just watch the balance. Don't overpower it, because if I go too far, what's that? And watch my distance. All right, I'm going to go way too much. And that's what we get, right? There is one person in the chat right now that's like, I love that. More power to you. If you like that look, wow, you have a good life because that's so easy. Well, it's not that easy.
Or American Apparel will hire us.
That's right. Are they still around? All right, so. Apparently, all right. So, anyways, that's the thing. I'm going to take this off the camera. I could just use it as the remote, but it sometimes is confusing. They want to do that, so I'm going to just take it off.
You're soft, Daniel. Soft.
Yeah. Well, there's sometimes people will be like, are you using that flash? Okay, so, are there questions? I'm tempted to drink more of this Faygo for some reason.
No, really.
No.
Tina's is saying thank you. You taught him a lot. You went to a portrait session very confident recently. Patty says hello. And
Awesome, thanks guys. By the way, if you don't know this, and you're in New York, when are you doing the next one? Seth has been running live events again. So if you are local or somewhat local and you want to see more live events in the store, hit Adorama up and be like, show us more live, show us, is that the right way to say it? Let's have more live events. Yeah, okay.
you do the 25th to 26th.
25th to 26th of October, and I've heard that it might be Halloween related, but it will not be me and Marissa dressed as Coneheads. So you don't have to worry about that, because that was absolutely terrible.
You were just like a Chucky doll. That was good.
That when I actually wore Marissa's sweater, that was probably the
Chucky doll. I had no
yes,
idea you were Marissa.
that was the peak of my time. I peaked. All right, so
It's still available.
and it's still available.
It's still on the channel.
That's right. They will.
2019.
Yes, if you can find that video, post it in the chat, and you will get extra points.
So there's a question.
Yep.
On-camera flash fill, portrait orientation, equally effective. What is that?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. So if you're gonna hold the camera sideways, what we used to call portrait orientation, that was cool. You know, like a vertical shot, basically. The flash is going to be more to the side, right? So yes, it might be an issue if it's off to the side. What I would generally do there is make sure you turn the head up and try to bounce it if you can. But yes, it will work. It just won't be as high, so you just have to watch the angle. Let's try to create let's not just try. Let's create a finished shot. What do you think about that?
I think that's great.
Wow, you must be feeling good today.
Right. I think I'm just going to use 2 lights because I don't have a way to hang that one without going into my other bags. And I'm going to try to make this one live stream where I don't have to dig in the closet in the middle of the live stream. Oh no, I was going to show the other thing first. Seth has these really cool neon boards.
I only got pink and green.
All right.
Pink.
So I'm going to dig. Right. Yeah, I think, you made these, right? Yeah.
There's a video on it.
There's a video, if you go to, it's on your channel, right? If you go to Last X Witness on YouTube, you can see how to make one of these, or we sell them on our Etsy shop.
No, we don't.
No, we don't. Well, we should. All right, so,
We're definitely gonna get, what's the Etsy shop?
so this is like a chroma green looking thing, and this is pink. And what we're gonna do is, I mentioned before, and you took my word on it for some reason, because I guess you trust me, that if you bounce the light off a board, the colored board, the color will change. So let's actually do this. So let's go back into our regular position. Let's get into our Rembrandt-y kind of feel. All right, here we go. So again, this is just the A light. Oh, it's in manual though, so it's a little dark. Let me throw it back in TTL.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, that's not bad, but I was wondering. Get a CTL exposure. There we go. Perfect. All right, now, pink or green? Pink, okay. Take the pink, we reflect. We should get pink. There we go. Look at that. Pink reflection. No gels required. Throw some smoke in there and you're basically an expert.
What's with those people in this smoke?
Just a cheap thing that changes things drastically.
And there's green if we want to do She-Hulk, right?
She-Hulk.
Easy, 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 right? Whatever the light's bouncing off, it's going to reflect back. So if you put a color there, it's going to reflect. You put silver, you put bronze, you put white, it's all going to bounce back in. Cool, that's actually pretty nice. Huh, maybe we'll keep that. All right, so let's make a finished shot. In order to finish a shot like this, not this one, but I think we'll use the fill light as a passive fill because we're just going to use 2 heads, and then we'll set up a second head to be like a hair or a kicker light. So what I'm going to do, because you want to always evaluate the lights that you have, and I think in my situation here, it makes more sense to use a smaller light source for the hair light. So I'm going to back up a little bit and have her come a little forward. Cool. All right. So I'm going to set this up over here. Give me my hair light / kicker light. That seems about right? Something like that. Although she's probably going to look this way. Can you look that way? Are you okay to look that way?
I can look this way.
It's weird, but yeah. No, you can look that way. It's fine.
My nose is.
Yeah, it's the wrong side. All right, so she's going to look that way.
It is.
Yeah, well.
I can only shoot from this.
Yeah, there's only one way. It is the way.
I broke my nose.
Yeah. During a photo shoot.
That is like, what is she talking about?
I'm pretty sure I shot you both ways.
Yeah, I know, this side's the best side.
Just because you've done it doesn't mean it was right. All right, so
Whoa!
what I'm going to do.
Oh, I lost the stream, Dan.
Wow. No. Kansas is beautiful from all angles. All right. All right, so I'm going to
I'm
now.
only pretty from the right.
Oh no. All right, so I'm going to.
It's like Zoolander, I can only turn one way.
Right, it's one direction. All right, so, and just for consistency purposes. All right, I'm gonna switch this up a little bit. I'm taking what is effectively the B light, which was our fill light before. I'm going to put it through this silk and to showcase the answer that I gave, but I'll show you. In order to get the most coverage, I'm just going to turn the modeling light on, and we can see probably that some light goes past the silk. If we want more control over it, we just want to make sure that that's not the case, right? So we're going to move it in, minimizing the amount of light that goes past the silk. Sometimes it's tricky with these Profoto lights because they really spread a lot. Because I'm in a white studio, I'm not overly worried about some of the light bouncing around, especially off the floor. That's not going to do much. So this is probably good.
You know, it might help if we make it orange.
Make it orange so you can see better. There it is. You can see it. So we can see some of the light is creeping past, but none of the hard edge of it's hitting her. So it's not going to bother me. So there we go. By the way, these have bicolor modeling lights that you can use for filmmaking.
Someone's asking, would you say that one of the tube lights would be good for a hair light?
Would a tube light be good for a hair light? In my experience, no. Not unless you have it really close to somebody. Because tube lights generally throw the light everywhere, and with a hair light, you really want to get a cutting edge so you can control where it falls. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to use for a hair light, but it wouldn't be my first choice. All right, so we're going to use this as our key light. We just have the B light. I'm going to put it in TTL. Again, to establish a base exposure. The light in the back that you see back there is not going to fire, hopefully, if I did this right. Okay. Okay, so now we've got a light that really doesn't need a fill. All right, so let me actually make it a little, let me make the light not need a fill. I mean,
You also get a lot off the floor.
yeah, I know. But by the way, this is if you have this silk right here, you really don't need, a fill light. What I'm going to do here is I'm not going to use the whole silk. I'm going to come in closer, which I just kind of explained before, effectively making my light source smaller, which will then effectively make the light have more shadows, and I can say effectively a lot. I'm looking through using the modeling light. Everybody's excited about it. They're like, what's going to happen next? Your hair's all crazy with the, yep. All right, there we go. Now, same source, moved it a little bit closer, but that's not the main thing I did. The main thing I did was I moved the light closer to it, making it effectively smaller. I also raised it up a little bit, which maybe was too much. Okay. All right, so good. Now, it's part two, because we got to do this in sections. You never just come out with a good shot right away. This is the key to this, by the way. I learned this in my years at Barnum and Bailey. PT Barnum taught me this. Like right here is like a little flyaway-ish. Yeah, all right. So there we go. That's our fill light kicking in, looking all good. Probably a bit much. Was that the silver side? Yeah, we'll go white. Okay, I didn't look at the camera, so hopefully there'll be a shot there. Yeah, there we go. All right, there we have a fill light. Everything's looking good and clean, but then you're like, Daniel, she's just falling off in the back like one of those 1960s Batman TV shows. Yes, she is. So now everybody's gonna have to go watch one of those shows and realize that like none of those sets were anything but just black backgrounds. All right.
That's so true.
Yeah, most of them anyways.
Weird.
We operate with low budgets around here, all right. Now, I'm turning on the backlight. This is where everything goes bad. No, first I'm gonna just test the backlight, which is gonna be a TTL shot. It's gonna be probably overexposed. Yeah, all right. So, terribly overexposed, as you might imagine. That's because TTL is trying to light her face to be properly exposed, and we don't want it to do that. I'm going to switch this to manual and I'm going to drop it 3 stops. Okay, so what I've done now, again, this is just how I'm metering using the TTL. There we go. That's pretty good to start. I'll probably turn it up a little bit, but I'm going to turn my key light back on. Again, no fill right now. I'm just going to kind of bring it in. Okay, good, right? Subtle, subtle. And then finally, oh, the name of the game. Boom. Okay. 2 lights. With 2 lights, we made 3, right? We got a nice hair light, we got a nice key light, and we got a nice fill light coming in on the side. The nose shadow which falls into her cheek is acceptable. Yes, 100%. Where?
I think he's just
This?
if you drag down,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the shape of my nose.
Yeah. You're talking about where it's more hard? Yes, of course. The nose shadow is 100% acceptable to me and to Cadence, and now I have to use the little pink reflector to end it. Well, not end it while we're flying. Okay, we'll give him actually something else.
Request for Paramount light.
Paramount. Okay, terrible. This is why we don't use gels and stuff. It's really just.
Is there a benefit to using TTL over a light meter?
Okay, is there an advantage to using TTL over a light meter? Well, speed is the main advantage. Light meters have their place. You sometimes see me use one because they allow you oftentimes to be a little bit more precise, especially when you don't have the subject there. So TTL is great when you need to work fast. TTL is also what a lot of people use, so that's why I use it in the demos, because this is what primarily people are using. If you want to use a light meter, it's great if the subject's not there. If you're doing something really precise, it is definitely super useful. But for this, not required. Paramount. Do you know what that is? Is that like?
It's a way of saying pretty spotlight contrasty, so it's like a very, like old Hollywood.
Oh, I see. Well, I don't have a hot light to really do that. I could use a beauty dish though.
I mean, you kind of do. You just gotta
Yeah.
use a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Let's switch to the beauty dish though, so we can create a little more shadow. Let's see something a little bit more dramatic, I guess, is what we're looking for. I'll make you a star. Down here at Paramount Studios. We're gonna record the movie here. All right, I am going to use the beauty dish. I'm going to use a butterfly lighting, well, actually I won't do that. I'm gonna use a modified butterfly. I'm just making stuff up now. Light. Up close. Okay? Because if we want a punchy light, but we want it to still be gentle, we want to make it close, because close will give us fast fall off, right? But close will also make soft. So we're going to do that. Oh, I hate that that's so yellow. Am I fixing that? Nope, I'm not.
Push it in.
There we go. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Nothing's happening. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, you were
you
doing
had
it.
it.
I did it. Okay.
Yeah,
There we go.
Nothing's happening. No, you got it.
Okay.
that's good.
It's white. Okay, good.
It's white.
So it's got dual color. It used to be model lights were all warm, and now I'm so used to them not being warm that it kills me.
It goes,
All right. Going back to this, I've got the B light here. I'm going to turn off my A light. This is now in the modified butterfly position. Let me get out my 8x10 camera. All right, we're going to go with a punchier light. This might be a little hot on your head. Yeah, okay, it's too hot because I'm in manual. Let's go to TTL. The other thing the light meter will do is slow you down so that you don't do things like that. All right, here we go. So we're going to go a little punchier. And we can see now, too, the idea of having the light closer is we definitely get a lot more catch lights if you're into that kind of thing. Do we want, is it like a Rembrandt? I don't really look at the old Hollywood pictures. I know people are into that, but that's not my deal.
It's not your jam.
It is not my jam. I like her Brits, though. All right. Good. We're going to go with a little bit more of a punchy light. Okay, and again, if we're gonna do this, again, I think that the old Hollywood light is not filled in at all, so it kind of goes completely contrast to the idea of using.
It's also a blown background, it's not black.
Right. I'm gonna have you look this way and up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. We come in. But if we use a punchier light like that, we can then kind of shape the face. That's probably what I would do with that. You see the reflector didn't do a whole lot there because I have a grid on there. So I was barely getting any of it. So let's do that, and let's come in and let's add a hair light again. This is not at all what you're asking for, but it's just something else we're doing because I am not gonna do that. All right, here we go.
Use a hard light for a hair light.
Okay, you can use a hard light for a hair light. However, keeping in mind that a hair light is going to, hair, the reason, the way a hair light works, is the reason why hair is reflective is because it has oils in it usually, right? So your hair light is effectively a whole bunch of specular highlights. If I hit her with a tiny little hard light, she's gonna have a bright spot in the center of her head, and then it's gonna spread out. I used to see people all the time recommend people using grids for hair lights. I don't think so. You want a softer light source. The ideal hair light for me is something that's gonna get the whole length of the hair. So something like a softbox or a strip box would be good for a hair light, usually. But I would not go with a hard light for a hair light, or else you're gonna get a hot spot in the center of her head, which is not really what I'm looking for. But your mileage may vary, as they say. Do you like to use a hard light for a hair light?
I like the key is going across it to create the texture.
Yeah.
Instead of going into it.
Exactly. You got to go across it to create texture. That's 100% true. But I don't think, well, let's try it. This close with this light that spreads out.
I feel like once you start doing a hard light, it turns into a rim light fast.
Right, exactly. It becomes more of a punchy rim instead of a subtle hair. Okay, so I took the softbox off, so I'm going to lower the power of that light by 2 stops. That's about what the softbox eats. And this will be now effectively a hard light. Okay, so we can see the difference. You're getting a little bit more specularity in the hair, right here, but you can also see that it's not quite as even because the light is it doesn't have the coverage. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. Both can work. You could do this light and then back up maybe, but then you might have to worry about where the edges of it go. So maybe flagging it off or something would help you. Either one can work. I like a soft light for the hair though, personally. If somebody was bald, you would do it exactly the same way. There's no difference of how to light somebody because they're bald. If somebody is shiny, then you want to make sure that you're using a light source that's soft, because a specular highlight, which is shine, is a reflection of your soft source, so of your light source. So I definitely wouldn't do this for somebody who was bald. I would do it the same way. I would use a softbox, maybe even a bigger one. You want to make sure that being aware of how light works is the key, not like a thing like, okay, they're bald, so I do this, this, and this. It's like, why am I lighting them that way? Well, if I don't want a specular highlight on somebody, then I want to use a large source that's diffuse, because a large diffuse source will spread the light out, and then it'll be spread out over their bald head, right? But if you use a small source, it'll be like bling, and that's it. Also, if you are somebody that uses corporate portraits and stuff like that, I recommend getting rice paper sheets with translucent powder in them. You bust those things out, and you're just like, plop, plop, plop on their head, done. Do not bust out the old powder thing with the mirror and with the unicorn on it. Most people aren't going to be down for that, but the rice paper, so there you go, free tip. Unfortunately, I do not sell those at Adorama.
Ask before you touch them.
Well, obviously you should ask before you touch people. That's why you come at them with it like this, so they can see you. You don't sneak up behind them and be like, guess who? That would be a little weird.
I mean,
they call them oil blotting papers.
Oil blotting paper is another name for them, exactly. So, because that's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to remove what's reflective. What's reflective is the shine is the oil. That's really what that's about. So larger light source is going to be softer, so gentler shadows. It's also going to, remember, your highlight is a reflection of your light source. So if the light source is bigger, the highlight will spread out.
someone's recommending coffee filters.
I wouldn't put a coffee filter on somebody's head.
Yeah.
Maybe if you know the person, especially not a used one.
Oh my God.
So just because I always do, I'm going to end with a profile. Yeah. Listen, this is what I do. This is my signature shot.
Profiles?
Profile. I'm a profile liking kind of person. There it is. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give her plenty of room to breathe. Okay. A head. Okay, so I'm turning off the light in the back. I just want to get the first light. I'm in TTL. So this is the beauty dish just on her grill. And what we can see here is that it's way overexposed, but we can see that we've got quick fall off. I'm just going to look at this and drag back my exposure slider to see where I need to be. Okay, it looks like I'm about a stop and a half overexposed. So I'm going to come over here, and because you know TTL is great until you start putting the lights in weird positions. Then it can sometimes be off. So I'm just going to, instead of spending a lot of time, I'm just going to switch it to manual now. I'm going to lower the power of the light by a stop, 1.2 stops, and we're just going to take another shot. This is the advantage of this light, is that it stays locked in. Like that's kind of what you want. Now we've got beautiful profile. Wow, your eyes are like cat's eyes. Now, if I wanted to do a passive fill, right, I would need to put the light where the light falls, right? So if I want to fill this front part of her face, right, and there's nothing, right? Because there's no light over there. This is why active fills are really useful, because if we want to fill in that front part, just show that little bit of detail, that's where we want to move a light in from the front. And you can use anything you like. I'm just going to use this. Again, I usually recommend using a larger light source, but since I have this setup already. Ooh, would I use a polarizer to deal with skin reflections? No, not really. I prefer to not do that because polarizing filters can mess with skin tone. I know that people do custom white balances and we're all shooting digital these days, but it can really flatten out people's skin. So like when I lived in Florida, we used to use polarizing filters all the time. We were shooting outside and we would always throw like warming filters on the lens and stuff too to compensate for it, because it usually messes with people's skin tone. So I don't recommend it on skin for that purpose. I'm not gonna say never use it, but it wouldn't be my solution. All right, I'm gonna come in here again. This is my fill light again. We're gonna do an active fill, which means that we have total control over our fill light. This is in the A group. It's gonna be in front. And I'm gonna do it exactly the same way. I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna turn off the B light, which is the beauty dish. Yeah, I will. I'm gonna turn the A light on, and I'm gonna turn on its modeling light so we can see it. And then I'm gonna come over here and I'm just gonna make a shot with just that light. I'm in TTL, and that's gonna give us a flat, boring shot, right? Hey, fantastic. Oof. Well, thanks for coming. That was, okay. But again, we know this is wrong. That was the intention. The intention was for positioning. Now we have it here. We're gonna switch to manual, and that was pretty much at exposure, so we wanna go at least 2 stops. I'm gonna go 2.5 stops down. Okay, I'm gonna turn my other light back on, and we're gonna make a shot, and we'll see where our shadows fall, and then we'll adjust from there. Okay, now we've got decent shadows, right? We can control the depth of shadow however we like. Somewhere between here and here is perfection, right? So I think that probably another stop and a half. And again, this comes down to your own judgment as to what you like.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go down 1.5 stops, and then we're gonna take another shot. Project your chin out a little bit. Good, here we go. And again, I'm only adjusting the power of the fill light. There we go. Now we've got detail. We still get the beautiful profile. And again, you can come in wherever you like. We can come up and down. Another trick to this is, because I'm in capture 1, is you could grab your exposure slider and just look at the shadows and move those down until you get them where you want. Like let's say, I don't know, here. And that's another stop and a half. Come down here. 1.
What if you want to light the back of her head?
Okay, what if I want to light the back of her hair? Well, that I could definitely do. Okay, so this is good. All right, so now we're here. We've got it exactly where we want it. And then I'm like, oh man, this is great. The art director's like, well, what if you want to light the back of her hair? Fine. So for that, we'll need another light because again, there's nowhere to bounce. Luckily, I have this one. Yep, we're gonna have to hand hold it. Thank you, Seth. We got this light. Should we, can you insert it into the softbox maybe? All right, into that guy, I think so, otherwise it's gonna spill everywhere. All right, all right, all right, Seth has got it. He's pointing it. It's in manual, it's probably way too much power, but let's just try it. Yeah, maybe make it at like, I don't know, 3 or something. What's that, 7?
You were like 5, 4 stops over.
Okay, all right, here we go. Let's see where we're at. There you go, perfect.
Voila.
Back of her head lit.
Yeah, I should go with this though.
Yeah, we got a little flyaway there, which, you know, I like. But if you don't like flyaway, then that's when you bring in the makeup. You go like this, you go makeup, then they come in. Or actually, hair, and they come in and do it.
Nice looks.
Yeah.
Give me that board.
All right. Ooh.
Yeah,
All right.
let's do it again.
We're bounce boarding it. All right. Seth is adding the appropriate amount of power. About what? 2 stops? 2.5 stops? Stop and a half. All right. Here we go. Boom.
Sorry.
Wow. You saw him assault me, right? No,
Sorry, Dan.
no, beautiful.
Yeah,
There we go.
Way better. Way
Again,
better.
nicer, right? Because we've got a larger light source, a softer light source creates a longer strip of light. This is a little bit more dramatic. It's like, oh, look. But the reality is that this is just more gentle and nice. We're a studio shot. Thank you, Seth. This is why Seth is the master of all holding of lights. I don't know. That didn't sound so dramatic, but it's good. Thank you.
All right, there's a request to do that same thing but with the pink reflector.
Oh boy. Okay. Same thing, but with the pink reflector.
Pink hair.
Okay.
It's a good viewer, so let's do it for him.
For you, we're doing it.
Hang on.
Oh yeah, that looks pretty cool. All right, here we go. Hold on, adjusting my focus. Here we go. Projector channel a little bit. Good. Boom. We should. Oh, look at that.
Woo!
Fancy.
You're in a nightclub now.
Boom, 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 boom. Right, and there we go. Pink reflector. So again, once you understand how light works, you can start to manipulate it to do what you need it to do to create the images that you want to create. And fill light isn't just about, again, fixing problems, right? We want to create the shadows that we want and then use the fill light to, weirdly, fill them. How much you fill them depends on the drama that you want to add to your shot. If you just want flat light, you don't necessarily need a fill light. You can just use a very large source and place it in a place where shadows aren't going to fall. But if you want that shape, if you want to control the shape of the light, that's when fill light becomes very powerful. Now, if I was photographing like 3 people all together that I needed kind of an even light over them, I would not put up a small light with shadow and then add a fill. That would just become a mess of shadows. What I would do instead is use something large to cover the area, because there's always that one question about the group. And then to answer the question about full length, it's exactly the same except further back, basically. Because somebody always asks about full length and somebody always asks about groups. To shoot a full length shot, you just got to back the lights up a little bit, which generally means you're going to want to use slightly bigger lights so that you get that same feel for the light. Because remember, if I take my little tiny light and I back it up, it becomes even smaller. And the reason why we have it is because we want that shape and size. That's why they make different size softboxes. Not just because they feel like making them. Okay. What if the model had a hat on?
Well, let's get one.
That's a heck of a request.
Luckily, I have one.
Fortunately for you,
Black hat, too, yeah.
the model has a hat. All right. Okay, well. Weirdly, I had this exact same hat in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I was very much into Boy George, Karma Chameleon and all that.
What do you change?
No, I still like Boy George. Nothing's changed.
Explain what you're changing.
Okay, what am I changing? I'm just moving. I'm not going to use this big flat. Well, first of all, we're not going to do a profile because we have the hat, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just moving the light around to the front to create that similar kind of punchy light with the, I don't know, is it being blocked by this? Move this. Okay. So I'm just moving it up front. We're just getting a basic 45 going. Again, we're resetting. I'm going to go to TTL. I'm going to turn off my A light, which is this guy. And I'm gonna just have the beauty dish, and we'll take a shot, and boom. Okay, she's got a hat. Oh, I suppose I should show the rim of the hat in the shot. All right, hold on. There we go. So she's got this hat. And there we go. Is that what they want to see? Oh, you want to see the hat filled in. Okay, so she has this hat, and I'm gonna back up a little bit so we can see more of it. I'll try to not be a wise guy here. All right, so hat, good, right? But we've got shadow on it, right? It's creating a shadow on top of her head. We can't see the top of the hat. So again, we bring our fill light in, like this. Now with this one, because the hat is up high, relatively speaking, and I want to make sure I get enough light on it. Again, this is where the silk comes in handy versus, let's say, a softbox. Because what I'm actually gonna do is move my light higher on the silk, making the top half of the silk brighter than the bottom half, which should create more fill at the top than the bottom. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, but it's true. All right, I'm just gonna leave it in TTL just because I'm a wild man. And let's just see what happens. I'm predicting flat. Oh, yeah, not bad, a little flat. So now we can evaluate this and go, oh, that's not bad, but it's a little bit flat. Let's take our fill light, which is in the A group. Let's go to manual. Let's drop it down to 1.5. We should get a nice little fill and still have shape to her face from this. There we go. Yeah, we can add a light to the back if we want. If we don't want her to fall off into the distance, we'll give her a little rim light. Well, we can see how I did that? Is that just for the people that had asked before about the softbox? By raising this up, the top half of this is brighter than the bottom, which means that that's how I get her hat at the top to be brighter. Because if I had left it in the center, in order to get her face properly exposed, the hat would be too dark. That's why I did that. Okay, here we go. We got a little rim light action. Okay, and boom. Bring the rim light in. Oh, it might need a little more with the hat.
That just ate up that light.
Yeah, it's right here too. You can see it in the see it on the hat. We just need a little bit more. Yeah. All right, here we go.
That hat is just eating light.
Yeah.
It's green too. It's not black.
Yeah, but it's felty.
It's like a felty hat. Yeah. There we go. That might be a bit much, but there you go.
All right, try this here.
That's like a hat catalog.
Come on. Let's go.
Really, a pink? Okay, somebody's gonna ask for it, so we just try to
Why
predict.
not?
I just know what's gonna happen.
Okay. Boom. We are all about the gimmick here.
There you go.
Actually, weirdly, the pink looks pretty good with the hat. All right. Thank you, Seth.
Wait.
Hold on. Seth has got something going on.
Do copper.
Oh, copper. I'm going to turn the fill down a little bit as well.
Copper light.
Oh, I just turned you down. I didn't mean to do that. Ah. Sorry. All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's nice with the copper light.
Yeah, the copper.
Okay, so to explain what we did there. Seth brought in this copper reflector, which you can also see him make on his channel. It did create a little bit more of a specular light, but it works really nicely. I did a couple of adjustments. I turned this light, the fill light, down about 2/10 of a stop to give mine a little more shadow. And I turned that light up, while he was holding his hand, up a stop. So we did. We turned it up a stop because it ate too much light at first. So at this point, we've got our lights in positions that create effectively a three-dimensional image with a little bit of color. You could get the shadow in the front darker and richer if you use less fill, but that's kind of up to you however you want to do it. Okay. That seems pretty good. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Good to go. All right, so this is Cadence Frank. You can follow her. I am Daniel Norton, Daniel Norton photographer. Seth is Last Ex-Witness. Check out his YouTube channel where he makes these reflectors and does a lot of awesome photo shoots. He doesn't just make reflectors. He just makes reflectors all day long. He's just making reflectors and doing all kinds of awesome stuff. Seth's an amazing photographer. He is doing live demos in Adorama again. So at the end of the month, around the 25th, check him out if you're local. I'll be back in 2 weeks. And check out my podcast, A Voice with Daniel Norton. There is a link at the very top of the chat. I appreciate everybody watching. And I'm not sure about the Fago.